I know that Senator Lautenberg wouldn't want the people of New Jersey to go without a voice in the United States Senate. So today we're going to begin the process of sending a new representative to the U.S. Senate. Let me be clear. This is the way I see my responsibility to the people of this state. This is about guaranteeing the people of New Jersey both a choice and a voice in the process and the representation that they deserve in Washington. Whoever is going to be our next United States Senator should be nominated by a primary of the people and voted on by all the people of the state of New Jersey.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. That was Chris Christie yesterday with his bombshell announcement. Joining us now to talk about that and everything else that's going on is our friend Susan Ferrechio. She is the Chief Congressional Correspondent, Washington Examiner. Hey, Susan.
Hey, Steve, great to be here.
All right, here's my problems. I could talk for the next 6 hours about my problems with what Christie did. But if this is what Chris Christie believed, either he's doing it because, as he said, Frank Lautenberg would have wanted it this way, may he rest in peace, or this was a philosophy that Chris Christie has always had to be thinking about for a long time, because Lautenberg's been ill for quite some time, and should have told us this, months ago, that if, God forbid, I have to do something, I'll have an election. But obviously, that's not what he's always believed. He made this up.
Well, this is about Christie preserving Christie's political career, I think, mostly. He's always been about self-preservation. We know that from watching what happened after Hurricane Sandy. I think this was about making sure there wasn't a huge Democratic draw in November. And how would that happen? That would happen if there was a November election with Cory Booker on the ticket. Cory Booker is a very popular mayor of Newark. And if he was on the ticket running for Senate, as we know that he will be when the election actually rolls around, he could draw out a lot of people who could potentially help Christie's opponent, Barbara Bono, who is now way behind in the polls. So it's about his self-preservation first and foremost, governing this division.
All right, but Susan, then the argument would be, well, then just do what anybody else would have done. Do what Governor Christie Todd Whitman from New Jersey, previous governor, told me yesterday she would have done. Just appoint a Republican to be there till 2014. But that, he feels, I guess, would hurt him with a national election in 2016. I don't know. I can't even figure that one out.
I know. He's a kind of a mystery, too, because he could have just appointed somebody. But it does, it certainly will make it a lot harder for Republicans to win that seat. Let's face it, New Jersey's not exactly a purple state. So it was always going to be an uphill battle. If there had been a Republican in place who could have established name recognition, built a base of support, got some money together, maybe there was a fighting chance that Republicans could win. Now it's looking like those chances are really kind of out the window. And so he's not going to win any friends. I think that the main losers here in this decision are the Republicans. I mean, Democrats, let's say that Cory Booker would have preferred to be on the November ballot. This forces him to scramble a little bit in ways that he didn't want to. So in that sense, it can hurt Democrats as well. But Cory Booker, he's the popular candidate. But overall, the big losers in this instance are Republicans, much the way the Republicans were the big losers after Hurricane Sandy when Chris Christie and Obama were hugging on the tarmac.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, let's move to Michelle Obama, if we could, real quick here. She was at a fundraiser at a private home yesterday, and then a gay activist, lesbian woman, started heckling her. And here's how it sounded, cut 45.
Here's the thing, we cannot wait for the next presidential election to get fired up and ready to go. We cannot wait. Right now, today, we have an obligation to stand up for those kids. And I don't care what you believe in. We don't, wait. One of the things that I don't do well is this. You understand? One of the things, now,
All right. So what happened was Michelle Obama stopped speaking and gave an ultimatum: either the woman shuts up and leaves, or she leaves. The woman who was identified as Ellen Sturtz, a member of the LGBT rights group Get Equal, said that Michelle Obama got in her face. Not very first lady-like. Not ladylike, and certainly not first lady-like.
Well, there's a couple interesting aspects of this incident. One is that it was in a private home. It wasn't at a big public event where Ms. Obama might have had more reason to believe she was being recorded or reported on. So it does raise the question of, who is she really? Is she behaving a lot different privately? And the second issue that raises that's really interesting is just the comparison between how Mrs. Obama responds versus the way the president has handled hecklers in the past. He's always been someone who has pretty much been sympathetic to people, even when they're shouting him down. He has overall, he say, oh, there's some people who care about, environmental issues here when you've got the Keystone Pipeline protesters, or just let me explain. Why don't you sit down and I'll explain it all to you, things like that. So he has definitely been someone who has responded a lot differently from Michelle Obama, but it does kind of show a side to her. I mean, let's face it, she's not an elected official. Granted, she's the first lady, she's a very public figure, but she's kind of a little bit less experienced in all this than the seasoned politician who has probably been dealing with this a lot longer.
Right.
So you got to give her a little leeway there. But I think the most important question is her response, and perhaps thinking this was a private.
Right, nobody was rolling on it. There were no cameras, and was she going to get away with it? And one would wonder how Barack Obama might act if he thought there was no cameras and no sound with a heckler in a private setting, too. All right, very quickly, we only have about a minute and a half left. Susan Rice and Samantha Power.
Right, that's two very interesting nominations today. I think the big message here, Susan Rice, of course, wrapped up in the Benghazi matter, where she was the one who gave the talking points on the 5 talk shows that claimed the attack on Benghazi that killed the ambassador and 3 other Americans was the result of an impromptu a protest related to an anti-Muslim video. She is really under attack by universally, practically, by Republicans in the House and Senate for those acts. This is it really, if she was ever to be appointed to a role that would require confirmation, we all know that she wouldn't get it. But this is sort of an in-your-face appointment by the president. Even when people are calling for a resignation, the president has elevated her position. It also speaks to his desire to keep close his friends in his second term. He's very close to her. He trusts her. And I think that this sort of reinforces this idea that he's sort of an insular guy for president, and he likes keeping people close to him. President Bush was the same way, but President Bush didn't have a Susan Rice on his staff either.
Right.
He had a Condoleezza Rice, a lot different.
And
So,
Susan,
yeah.
I want to get this in 30 seconds. ABC News is saying that bipartisan meetings in the House on immigration reform have failed.
This is not surprising at all. It's different than the Senate. It's called a Gang of 8, but the gap between the two parties is much bigger, more like a Grand Canyon, and so they couldn't get past it. There's no way Republicans are going to go for letting illegal immigrants access the new Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, and Democrats are so wedded to it, there's no way they'll go for it unless they can get those benefits. They're stuck. I wouldn't rule out an eventual resolution, but this is just part of the massive problem of getting a bill like that